welcome to another episode of Pedal Pushers. I'm Zach.
I'm Matthew.
And this is episode 3.
Yes.
And
we're doing it.
We're surrounded by noises.
We're trying our best here. This is like our lovely industrial park that we make pedals in. They're doing a lot of work around here today.
Yeah, they're renovating the unit next to us, apparently. Well, I don't know. They're doing something over there. It sounds
pulling
like
out insulation.
Yeah.
I saw them had a special insulation dumping machine.
the front end loader.
I think my name of it is a little more accurate.
Insulation dumping machine.
Yes.
The IDM.
I had one as a kid, and I think Tonka made one. Yeah, I think Tonka made one.
The Tonka IDM.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a little noisy. So if we get distracted by, the goddamn hammering next door,
yeah,
that's what that is.
The thumps and bumps hopefully will be edited out. But
yes.
Anyway, how you doing, Matthew? You're a week away from being.
I think when we put this out, I'll have another child.
You will.
Right?
You absolutely will.
So,
or it'll be that day.
Are you going to put it out? We're going to put it out on March 1st?
I think so.
Well, happy birthday, little girl.
Yeah.
Baby
name redacted.
Name redacted. You think but I'm fucking with you.
See, I don't know. It's like Matthew.
He's been trying to get it out of me.
Yeah, Matthew won't tell us the name because you guys want Air to hit her first, which I understand.
You got to look at the baby and make sure it looks like the name you picked.
Right.
It's very important to do this.
You don't look like an Arnold at all.
Exactly.
But I keep guessing, and so Morgan and I went on a 4-name baby girl website, and we were just like telling each other, I bet it's this, because she was picking some. I'm like, that doesn't sound right with Timmons, and it's like, because there's that's the thing you have to consider.
There are flows. Now you do know how many letters is in the name.
I do know that.
Yes.
Which I mean, well, by the time this is out, it doesn't really matter. But 4 letters.
Yeah, I know. It's 4 letters.
That's so many.
I know.
So many names could be 4 letters.
Yes.
But
yes, I will be off. I will be in the hospital with my wife and my new daughter, and it'll be exciting. So we thought we would record at least 1 this week and maybe 2 depending on, because I know you're doing a couple dipped in tones this week too.
Yeah.
So
sorry, I'm distracted by a wall.
Are you peeling all the
there's like a bump on the wall, and I touched it. And it looks like it has acne or something. There's like crap.
Why are you picking at the wall?
I don't know. I'm a picker. Okay.
So much excitement going on. You're just mindlessly picking at the wall.
See, what happens is when I get busy.
Yes, you do.
I get distracted very easily.
Yeah.
I think like I have a finite amount of focus.
Yes.
But the busier I get, sometimes I can really put on the blinders.
Like hone in.
Yeah, but that usually requires me blasting music, door closed, no one talking to me.
Yes.
But the moment I start getting up and moving around, it's just like, I turn into a little kid. Like, what did you tell me to do? Like, I literally just told you what to do.
I'm bad like that too, because, it's the nature of our jobs at this point, having 4 people that work here, and the dudes are making the pedals. So you and I have to cover a lot of ground. Mm-hmm. And so most days it's a variety of things, and focusing in, especially on a week where we've got, spoiler alerts, emailed dealers about a new pedal.
Right.
So we're putting that together. We've got a colorway launch on the website that's coming out this Wednesday.
Yep.
Which will be last week.
All right.
And we've got prototypes of a lot of stuff banging around.
Yeah. And more stuff incoming.
And
too.
we want to do this podcast. You're doing Dipped in Tone, and we're trying to get the YouTube channel kicking.
Right.
Which we put a YouTube video up.
Was that last?
It'll be 2 weeks when this airs.
Right. It was on Friday.
Last Friday.
Yeah, and it's funny because
maybe it's easier to tell. It's February 20th is when we're recording this. It's saying last week or next week. Yeah.
On the second episode we mentioned we're going to try to do a Nashville Guitar Store video, and then we did it.
Yeah,
and then I posted it.
Yeah,
and it's doing really well. And so thanks to everyone that went and watched it.
So that was a long-winded way of saying that we have a lot of different stuff that we work on. Every day, and we're both the same, where we can get very derailed.
Yeah.
In that way.
Yeah. But I feel like I thrive under pressure, but there's definitely some day, it depends on the day. Yeah. Then I'm like, you can just, I've just turned into a shiny object kind of person.
Well, that's why I've been trying to work better. I work better when we've got a lot of hard deadlines, even if we can't hit them.
Yeah.
having an idea of like, and we try to sit down at least once a week and look at the schedule that we've written for ourselves and go like, holy Toledo, this is too much stuff. This is too much stuff.
I like you avoiding cursing.
I'm trying. Holy Toledo. It's like, I already dropped the F-bomb like right away.
Right, it's okay.
I got rid of it. So the point is that like, so that's kind of where our lives are. And then I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks with the baby. So we're going to have to get all the stuff that I do kind of set up, and Jeffrey and Mac are going to help out with that.
Yeah.
But, this week, what we wanted to talk about was, and something that I've been fascinated with coming into your space, which is prototyping.
Yeah.
Which is, how does all this stuff happen?
Right.
Sorry,
the knocking. Well, you're not totally unfamiliar with it being, part of the guitar world. And
yes. So I'm used to, I worked back at Ernie Ball Music Man. So, I was around. I mean, they wouldn't let me in the room then because I was too green. But I was like around when like the John Petrucci model was getting prototyped. Mm-hmm. And a lot of neat stuff like that. But I was, packing up stuff at the end. So I wasn't in the brain trust just yet for that. But I was around like when Jason Lawler developed the gold foil, which is a very popular pickup.
Oh yeah, I would say that he
got that started.
Single-handedly brought it back to the mainstream.
I think he did too. And then the Lawlertron was huge. That was when I was there, which was very exciting. And then working with Dennis Fano on all the Novo stuff. But it's, to me, that it's, interesting seeing the process and how it differs between all the different,
right.
Now I've worked for pickups and then guitars and now pedals.
Right.
And just seeing your process up close, it's like, it's a whole new world.
It's chaos.
Yeah. And part of the thing that I think is chaos is, the other guys that I've worked with are a little bit more of the sort of, as I call them, mad scientists.
Right.
Like shut the door, and they don't want to talk to anybody. They don't want to they want to be in the lab at all times, and you do everything. So like prototyping is it's like a different side to you.
Yeah.
And sort of like you have a lot of other things that you have to accomplish besides that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really easy to, if you do that, because I have done that where it's like, I work on something and I don't bring anyone else in. Mm-hmm. And then when I actually show it to people, they go, I didn't realize, I totally missed something that someone else, if I had one other set of ears or eyes on something, they would have gone, I think you should try this. And that makes you go, oh yeah, of course I should. And
working with those other guys, like that was a part of that entire thing. Like that was, we were all involved in the process the entire time. But what I'm fascinated with you is the difference between sort of like how do you balance those ideas versus your responsibilities with the rest of the company. And then, let's dive in. I got questions here.
Okay.
Let's dive in. The big push, as we're calling it. That's our big weekly segment, the big push. Prototyping a pedal. So the first thing I want to know about is, and some of these questions I do know the answers.
Sure.
I'm just putting them on here for the listeners here.
That's right.
Is there's a million different ideas out there, a million different ways. So how do you even decide, I'm going to get started on a prototype. I want to get started on this pedal.
I think sometimes for me, it just comes down to how I feel in the moment. Sometimes it's out of necessity. Like, hey, I know we need to work on like insert type of pedal here.
But if you know that, like, but how does that kernel even get started for you?
Oh, like how, like before I even sit down at the computer, like, how do I decide?
If I say to you like, hey, like, so you say like, well, I need to work on this. It's like, well, when does it become a thing on the list? Yeah. Like, how does that start?
Well, like sometimes it's just me chasing like a sound in my head. That's kind of how the Oracle came to be. Because I had this idea for what I would have wanted out of a delay. Mm-hmm. And for those that don't know, the Oracle originally started as a digital, basically like an Echoplex meets a Deluxe Memory Man.
Yeah, I remember when you brought the digital one to the shop to show me.
It's white and has buttons and stuff.
All kinds of, I remember that. And I was like, okay, cool, this is coming soon.
Yeah, it was an idea. And so for that one, I started with that, and then I had to hire someone and made prototypes, and then eventually said, I hate this. I mean, I didn't hate it. It just had some gremlins that were inexcusable to me. But then we totally restarted with the fact that all I really wanted was an analog delay. So
yes.
I started over. And for me, that was a huge thing because I'd already invested all this time and money, but with stuff that's like, fresh. Usually I'll say, okay, I want to make a chorus, like we'll just use that as an example. Everyone knows it's coming. What do I like? And so I'll dive into whatever I have or talk to friends about what they have, what pedals they like, what features they like, what speaks to the Mythos ethos, and what feels true to me. And I start there, and from there, then I start diving into like schematics. So it's like, it's all, the initial part is all feeling and connection and trying to get something that just feels appropriate for how I approach making these things. But then I'll dive into, okay, maybe it's going to be based on a CE2. Maybe it's going to be based on a electroharmonics thing. Maybe it should be an original thing, and just try to decide how to go about. And that's
probably the part where I've been most fascinated with trying to understand, sort of how it gets started. So is it for most people, and you don't have to speak for the entire industry right now, but like, how often is it like that I'm going to find something that's, readily available online, that's been published, as far as a circuit to kind of base the start of this? Or is it like, I'm just going to go and just go to a breadboard and like just start hammering it? Like, what is, like, for you, what is that experience? And how has that evolved over time?
Right. I mean, I think initially all I knew was how to make clones.
Yeah.
And even now, like, I don't, people ask me what kind of education I have in this, and I don't. I have a degree in psychology and not electrical engineering, which I would like to go to school and get something, but time permitting is the whole thing. But I think the majority of people, because the community as a whole needs, need is a strong word, but everything is built around biases and expectations based off the things we already understand. So oftentimes it's just easier to take something that, I know that a CE2 works, or that a CE1 or a dimension or a small stone or whatever. I know that circuit works and sounds good. How can I make it more mine? And I think that's how most people kind of treat it.
I think it even just on a practical sense of somebody that doesn't know anything about pedals would say like, well, yeah, because you started with those. Like, if you're going to be a guitar player and you're going to buy a chorus, first thing you're going to do is, what did Billy have in 1979?
Right.
And then you'd be like, cool, because that's the sound that I like, and I want to find out what they have. And then the next thought when you're a builder is, well, what does it not do that I want it to do?
Right.
So I like it, but it doesn't do what I want it to do. So then that's where that starts.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, and then sometimes you're just like, well, this is perfect, and I want to make one that is just has my name on it.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, a lot of people do that, and I think that's fine.
That's not a, I mean, that's there's enough of that out there now that you don't think that that's a problem.
No, I mean, like, I wish I could sit down and just say, okay, we're going to make this, and just draw up something completely original. But there is like let's say we'll just keep using the chorus as an example. The chips, the Bucket Brigade chips, they function in a certain way, and the clock that determines like the time for the wave in a chorus functions a certain way. So if you're building something around those chipsets, it's gonna be familiar to another thing. Yeah, because I mean, that's just how it has to. So it does the sound you want it to do.
Yes.
But I think. Like, I'm totally cool with people doing direct clones, so long as I think the cloning thing, that's a whole nother episode. We can dive into that. Yeah. But I just want to be able to push something and try to improve upon it in whatever ways that I can. And hopefully eventually, with most things, if it's not trying to be a spiritual replica or successor or whatever to a classic circuit that were pushing the envelope. But that's a whole thing and a whole rabbit hole of trying to decide, like, are we going to make this, are we going to try to chase this sound in a completely brand new way? And then if we do, is anyone going to buy it?
Well, that's a huge part of this, is that clearly, like, if there's a market for the original pedal, and then you say, cool, I really like that, but I wish it did this, you might be the only one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then as a lifelong industry person, my thought with that is that if you want it, then somebody else does.
Right.
Because you've been around too long, and you got to trust that you have good taste.
Right. No, 100%.
And that's the whole idea of Mythos. But I think that, like, thinking about the difference between, I'm going to take something and I'm going to tweak it my way, versus I wanted to create something completely original because I have a sound in my head and there isn't anything out there that's like that.
Right.
Right. Like, you know, what is the difference there when it comes to prototyping? Like how do you even approach that? And do you have any like how scary is that going down that road?
Oh, to start from scratch?
Yeah.
Oh, that's way more terrifying, because I'm like, on your list here, I might be skipping a little.
That's fine.
You've got, designing in a breadboard versus a computer. And usually when you're doing something original, you have to kind of hear it as you go.
Yes.
And so you tend to design on a breadboard because oftentimes, with a circuit board, and we've experienced this with some of my prototypes.
Yep.
Like stuff gets baked in and it doesn't work. And then you have to get out there with an X-Acto knife and soldering iron,
which you told everybody, service mount, easy to fix, right?
Well, it is. I mean, it is easy to fix, and honestly, it's easier to modify prototypes because all the parts are on one side, so you can just access it. They're just tiny, but it's so much easier to do it on a breadboard because you're like, oh, that sounds like crap. You just literally pull it out.
Yeah, and go like, hey, go get this cap or this resistor, and let's try this instead.
That's all it is.
And then you keep going. Yeah,
but I think, doing stuff from scratch, for me, like, there's still going to be this reflection of things that have come before it because, they, like, these parts have to function just like the chorus. They have to function in a certain way. So if, like, I want to make an overdrive that's got an op amp, you would show that schematic to someone who might not know, have a deeper understanding of this stuff, and they would say, well, it just looks like a Timmy, or it just looks like a tube screamer, just like yeah, but it's not. Yeah, but it kind of looks like that, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, still got. So this is a little more of a. I'm just going off script slightly here, but out of all the effects pedals that are out there, like, how many of them like started out as something and then it was kind of an accident that it sounded the way it did? Like, how many people were like, when like the fuzzes were first, like they were they like, was that a sound in somebody's head, or did they try to make something and it fucked up and then they ended up with a fuzz?
Well, the fuzz,
and I'm sorry for my ignorance of like knowing pedal history. I need to watch more JHS show.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Josh, to learn about this. But in my head, that's like, I mean, famously, and the example I'll give was not pedals, but Viagra was heart medication.
Oh, was
it? And it gave you a boner. And they're like, oh, wait, well, that's cool too.
Yeah.
And that's how that happened. They weren't trying to do that, but that was the side effect. And they're like, well, I think that's pretty marketable.
Yeah. Well, it absolutely is.
It absolutely is. Yes.
Well, I think like, fuzz, it was a broken channel strip in a mixer. And then, replicating that, and then people pushing that envelope of like, the FZ1, the Maestro doorstop sucks. So let's make it better. Yeah. And then that's how you get the tone bender.
Yeah. So that's like an interesting thing versus the idea of like, I hear something that I want to try and go figure out how to go do, versus like people are out there just like hammering on stuff. Yeah. And then accidents happen. You go like, oh crap, that sounds really good. Yeah. And our example of it that I know of is the Hephaestus.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that happens all the time. I mean, like with a rudimentary circuit, you can really stumble across magic, even doing something yourself. I mean, because you just start throwing things together, and as long as the signal keeps flowing through it,
you're like, okay.
You're like, well, let's see what happens when I do this. And I've done that a bunch, and sometimes it's led to really cool things. And and more often than not, it just leads to crap.
Yeah.
But
so how often, like if you're starting, so you decide that you're going to go down the road, you're like, okay, I have an idea for a pedal. We'll keep going with the chorus, where it's like, I really think that a chorus is going to work great with the Mythos thing, and I really love the Oracle, and we need to sort of start dipping our toes into modulation because a lot of overdrive, a lot of fuzzes. It's time to do some new stuff. Like, how does that kind of come together where it's like you have an idea for what you want it to sound like versus, how long does it take before you have something that's like a working unit, and then when do you know it's like, okay, this is going to be good?
Right. Well, usually for me, when I have an idea for a pedal or a product, I kind of skip to the end almost, and I mock it up. I'll either draw it on a piece of paper, or I'll put it in the computer and put knobs on it and switches and kind of say, okay, what's the design going to be? Like, how is it going to like appear aesthetically? And sometimes that informs what feature set I would give it.
Okay.
So, if I think, oh, this looks really unbalanced like this, so let's put a switch here. Or, oh, this feels like it needs less stuff. Let's see what we can take away from these circuits. So I start there, and then I'll dive in doing research. With the chorus specifically, it was the CE2. Mm-hmm. So I had one that I had modified, and I just started listening to it and then looking at people's like the Boss schematic, which is, you can just find a copy of Boss's schematic. And then all the cloners out there, and then looking at who else was doing stuff and like trying to figure out how do we compete or sit next to in a pedal shelf at a retailer and get people's attention. Yeah. And that starts picking, then I start picking like the feature set, which again is back to the layout. Yeah. And then from there, it's either breadboarding a thing, or in my case, I drew a circuit in the computer. I thought this is going to work great. I order a circuit board, and it doesn't. It kind of works.
I remember when it came in. Yeah.
It kind of choruses. Yeah. But it sounded like crap. So in some instances, I would just go back and start working and saying, like, what did I do wrong? How, where is the signal failing? And I can throw all that on an oscilloscope, look at the computer, print things out, start chasing the schematic. Or in the case of the chorus, we hire someone who's smarter than me, and have them work on it. But if we conceptualize how the pedal looks, and then we order prototypes, and things do work, then we start putting it through the amps. And you guys have all been involved in this. You guys, as in the Mythos team, you guys. We've put it under a microscope. We all argue about if it's good or bad or needs this or that. Yeah. And ultimately, I'll decide, okay, we're ready to move forward, or it's time for another revision. Yeah. And once it's in a comfortable place sonically, and I feel like this is sellable, then I usually will do one more like revision of the circuit and order in another prototype, and then make one. Usually I'll get some enclosures mocked up and printed and powdered. Oftentimes, like with the Oracle, I got different powder coat colors. There was like 4 different pinks because you can't tell on a swatch how it's going to look exactly. And then I throw them together and line them all up. We pick the knobs and try to decide how it feels. And from there, it's just the preparation of actually making the damn thing. Yeah, totally.
So I have this question on here, and like, how often do you get it right the first time you order like the prototype PCB?
Like right as in, oh, it's done, right?
Yeah, like you kind of like you get your ideas, you start sketching things out, you start messing with stuff, breadboard, whatever you do, all that stuff. You finally say, okay, I'm going to order a PCB. You get on the computer, you put it together, order all your parts, you got everything sitting here waiting. The prototype shows up, you wind one up, you plug it in, you go, yeah, okay. And how often does that happen?
I would say that's a third of the time.
Oh, that's pretty good. I was going to say 10% maybe.
I would say a third, like 33% of the time repeating. It's like, that's great. That's exactly what I wanted. Because like I hope I have enough knowledge now to where if I'm doing something that is, if I feel confident enough to order it, that it should work.
Yeah.
And hopefully, again, like I know what I want to do from a schematic standpoint to say, okay, I want to change this and this and this, and we'll see how it goes. I'd say 30, around a third of the time, 33%.
So when's the last pedal that has been released to the public that was like that?
The Positron.
Positron?
Yeah, but I've made a bunch.
Yes.
And so the initial one, I just, pulled everything from the big box and then shrunk it. And now it did change in its construction a little bit and how we built them, but none of the values had to change.
Okay.
So it was just very minor tweaks, but like as soon as we got it was like, that's it. Okay. It's ready to go in a box. But then another third of the time, it'll work, but it needs some help.
Yeah. You're like, it's not exactly what I wanted to be.
And then the other third, it either works and sounds absolutely horrible or doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
And I'd rather it not work at all
than sound like
dog shit, because then that's harder, I think, sometimes that's harder to suss out. Cause like in the example of the chorus, I made the circuit board 4 layers, which normally a circuit board is 2 layers. There's signal running on the top and the bottom, but 4, it's like a sandwich. In the middle, there's traces.
Sandwich.
Starving.
Always.
And, you can't see those.
Yeah.
So if they're messed up, you have to hope you have it obvious to you in the computer. Otherwise,
you can't
get to them.
Wow.
They're in between like circuit board material. But yeah, I'd say there might be more of like, maybe it's 40% that they work, but they need a little tweak.
Yeah.
And then maybe 20% they just don't work at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like if it's something I'm comfortable with, it'll work.
Yeah.
And not need anything. Or
yeah,
maybe
I think
really
for the most part, the stuff that we've worked on since I got here, a lot of obviously stuff that's going to be coming at some point down the pike. It's like, it's been mostly like, hey, we just need to tweak this a little bit.
I'm glad you said pike.
Yeah.
Because most people say pipe.
Really?
Yeah, coming down the pipe.
It's coming down the pike.
It's coming down the pike. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I appreciate that.
There you go. Good.
Yeah, but like the Olympus, for example, we got that and we were all looking at each other. We were comparing it to the original big box one, that like the very first production one I made. And we were all like, I think these sound the same. And it may be and then the new one has slightly more bass. So I emphasize that, and then it has a little more gain, and then I emphasize that. And like, I think I like this better.
Okay.
But out of the box, like as soon as we like unwrapped the circuit boards and like threw one together, we're like, well, I mean, there it is. So, but it's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
And more often than not, the things that I get wrong, are stupid little mistakes where either it's something that I just missed or I didn't make a connection when I thought I did. And like some things in the computer, when you're having the computer help you, because what we use is a sort of CAD software. It's called Eagle, and it has like error checkers.
Yeah.
But it won't check an error if it doesn't know that an error should exist. Like for the last couple of prototypes we've got, there have been times where the traces, the connections look like they were touching, but in fact they weren't. But the computer doesn't know that I don't want them to touch. So it doesn't tell me that there's an error.
Yeah.
So we get them, and then I'm like looking at the computer and like everything's fine. And then you start clicking stuff with the mouse and you move something and you're like, oh, this doesn't even connect here. And so I'm out there with wires and solder. But yeah, it's a very long, painstaking process, even for stuff that's easy. Usually people ask, how long does this take to make something new? And I say it's at least 6 months, even if it's something like I'm familiar with, because inevitably, like the powder coat, it won't be available, or the art just is like kicking our ass and we can't figure out what to name the thing.
Name the thing or the font or...
Oh yeah, the font. I mean, like we looked at fonts the other day at stuff and...
For the chorus.
Yeah, and other stuff. And there's like...
Yeah.
there's an infinitesimal number of fonts, and then you have to buy them, so it's a whole thing.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the fun part about this, and looking at everything behind the scenes and being a part of that is like conception to like, cause like I'm now, I'm the money man.
Right.
So everything for me is like, what day are we shipping?
And you're like, why'd you buy, what is this? Why'd you buy this?
Why'd you buy it? What's this for? My thinking is, okay, what day is this shipping? What day are we announcing it? And then the stores have them already. And there's videos like I'm working backwards there. So when we're thinking about this and it's like me understanding the process to where I can start seeing that date start to like actually pop up in my head. I can go like, this makes sense versus like, you're looking at me like, oh yeah, we can get it done by then. And I'm like, no, because there's too many things that can happen until you get a prototype that's like finished that you're like, yes, this is it. Like, I don't even want to. So like kind of what our philosophy's been so far is like, let's just do it all.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing is that like, we've got a lot of stuff in the works right now. Obviously the stuff everyone knows about. I'm looking at the big board in my office, the Chorus and the Univibe, the Shoyles Fuzz, which people have been asking for forever.
Yeah, we've probably got 8 or 9.
Easy. And like what we're kind of trying to do is just do them all and then seeing which ones kind of like, which ones are the strongest and the fittest, like which ones get done. Like which
Darwinism over here.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think that if we said, okay, let's just do I think you drive yourself crazy if I just said, hey, do blank. Yeah. And you're like, get it done, get it right. And then all you were trying to do is do that. That's like kind of not how your brain works.
No. And like when I'm designing on the computer, like for some upcoming projects, sometimes and I think anyone who has to be creative in some aspect, I know that like I think about it as like solving a puzzle, like when I do layouts, because I'm not an engineer. And so sometimes I'll be working on a design and I'll lay it out and like, okay, everything's connected, it should work. And then you start working on something else and you realize, oh, if I just rotated these things 90 degrees, everything's going to look prettier. And so I go back and I try to make it, because I want it. There's a certain chaos that some pedal builders have with their circuit board aesthetic, which is fine. But I want everything that we do to have some sort of sense of flow. And most of that is not just to be aesthetically pleasing. Like I like everything to be in straight lines and like all oriented the same orientation. But it's easier to chase a problem in the beginning when like when all your parts are laid out in an easy to understand way. Yeah. And that's a big part of it. And there've been many times, like I have a lot of designs without naming any names in the computer that we could order them and they'll probably work, but I still feel like I need to go through them with a fine tooth comb and say, is this as good as I can do this? Yeah. And that to me is probably the longest part of everything but the initial design stage. Yeah. Is that like having the faith that the thing that we're working on, when we get that prototype board in, we put the foot switch and pots on it, it's going to work. Yeah. Which is scary. And we'll like it. And it's right. and it's strong enough to where we could say other people are going to like this and want to buy it from us. And there's many times where, you three have said, "Oh, it's great." And I'm like, I can't believe in it. Well, and it's hard too, because there's a difference there between it sounds really good to who gives a shit. Right. Does this need to exist? It's like and that's a funny part about being in the pedal world now. Yeah. And thinking about it that way, as opposed to some other stuff. I mean, maybe harkens back a little bit more to being in the pickup world, where it's like, hey, we're going to make a set of Strat pickups, which we just did. It's like, oh. It's like if you said like, I'm going to do a chorus, it's like, well, there's a lot of choruses to buy. Right. Yeah. So it's like, no matter, even if it sounds really good, it's like, we have to figure it out, like, will anybody care? And does this matter? Or are we excited about it enough to like get on camera or on a podcast and say, this kicks ass. Like, this is fun. This is exciting. Like, instead of being like, just go buy this one. It's fine. It's great. Right. And that's an interesting part. So that's part of the process too,
of you know, having so much stuff sort of rattling around is like, you know, seeing them sort of, or the varying degrees of excitement that we get on stuff. Cause I think we hit on one a couple weeks ago where we decided to like try, you know, two of them at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
And we all kind of had the same reaction.
Yeah.
We're like, oh,
yeah, now we're talking.
And those are those fun moments where you just kind of don't know.
Yeah.
And you could say like, you know, and you could, you know, there's a lot of classic circuits out there where people have been asking you forever, like your version of it. And you're like, sure, I could just put it out. It'd be great. But like, you know,
why? Yeah.
And the why is interesting, you know?
Yeah.
So like for the chorus, I'm excited about it because I think the why is as a sort of, you know, I don't know what would be a one sentence description of your guitar playing, Zach?
If Billy Gibbons was in the Meters, maybe.
Okay. That's terrific. I love it. So like the thing about that to me is saying like, oh, so then for me, the idea of like someone that plays like that, like how would they use chorus?
Yeah. Versus
sort of like a lot of modern chorus is it's like super lush and very, you know, post-rock soundtrack. Like, it's, you know, there's so many good examples of that nowadays for people that really want to have this very like full, like, you know, like I said, like sound, lush and beautiful and pretty. And I'm like, I want a chorus for riffs.
Right. Yeah.
And so like, that's an easy one for me to say, like, you have to do this.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I don't think it necessarily is represented out there very much.
Not very much. I mean, like, you know, we definitely look to our peers for inspiration and to see if like, can we compete with X? You know, like, okay, the perfect example is Jam.
Jam's a great example.
The Dalai Lama and the Oracle, they released a new the Oracle came out. It's pretty similar to the Dalai Lama, except it had a tap tempo. And then they released a new version of the Dalai Lama, not the extreme, but the normal one with the tap tempo. And then it had subdivisions. I was like, you sons of bitches. But because mainly I'm not mad at them. I'm mad at myself because when we were designing it,
you thought about, John, does it need subdivisions?
Yeah. John was like, should we put a subdivision switch? I was like, well, have you already got it basically done? He's like, yeah, I'd have to rework it entirely.
Yeah.
It's like, damn, I don't know.
And I'm going to tell you right now, as being a simpleton on the guitar, where I just want to riff, bro. Like I like it as I like something that doesn't, you know. And the Jam stuff is cool, and I played the extreme delay lot, you know, and it's super fun. But I get like I break out in hives just thinking about that.
That one's hard, but most of their stuff is very
it is. It's very simple, and so you know, when it comes to a chorus, like after getting the Oracle. And, you know, playing it and realizing this was the pedal I'd been waiting for.
Right.
Is basically how I would describe it. Like, that's why I was excited about the chorus. Cause I'm like, I want the guy that decided that this is what's great about the Oracle. I want that too.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's the push into modulation.
Yeah.
Which is exciting to me. And you know, I like kind of like diving into that headspace for you when it comes to it. And I'm really excited to push that even further for us at Mythos is kind of like the why behind all of this stuff.
And it's funny because like I struggled for a long time after Mythos really like, it's 2020 really is when it totally popped off. And, you know, I struggled for a long time just to admit that I wanted to make a Univibe because it's like there's so many great ones out there. Why should I bother?
Why,
daddy?
Why?
But you know, I've had to just accept the fact that
have you accepted the fact that people want your version of things finally?
Yeah, that's really what it was. And it's like, you know,
and that's kind of, you know, my long-winded way of saying, because I'm long-winded in every way possible, of saying that, like, that's why I'd be excited about the chorus and Univibe from you, because I have a pedal and I go, I've got plenty of delays that sound terrific, and I've just never bonded with any of them because it's too much going on.
Yeah.
And then the Oracle was like, oh, this is it. So like, that's where I'm like, oh, like what else can he do where I wish I could get a sound like that, but I haven't found one that I've loved. Well,
you say he, and like, I just want to clarify that I'm just steering the ship a little bit on the chorus and the Univibe, because I'm hiring people to help me design these things.
Oh, I know that.
But you know, for everyone else listening, so you know, I hired Brian at Mad Bean. Prototypes are incoming, and he's built a ton of these things. And when I first started learning guitar, my guitar teacher says, just surround yourself with people who play better than you. I'm like, okay, that's smart. And you know, I think if you apply that to anything that you try to do, especially professionally, you're just better for it. So I'm still going to be in there with the iron and tweaking, and like I've already reworked the PCB a little bit to be more.
But it's the sound. I mean, I think it's still the sound that you want at the end of the day. Right. And that's what I'm getting at. And I do. And this is going to sound like, oh, I'm saying nice things about my boss on the pod, but I do appreciate that you're forthcoming about that, because I don't necessarily think everybody would be.
Not all the time. And
about that other people are involved in that process, you know, which I think is really good.
Well, like Dan from That Pedal Show said, a rising tide lifts all ships. I don't know who said that before him. Undoubtedly someone has, but I had never heard it. And he told me that. And that was like such a profound thought. Yeah. That's like, if I'm benefiting from this, why shouldn't they benefit from this? And so I want to involve the community. I mean, we have a lot of friends helping us do some things that I can't even really talk about yet, but yeah, I don't know. It's just fun to keep the whole community involved, and you know, to help support people who are talented and deserve support.
You don't want to just pretend that you're the mad genius and you're doing everything.
The only thing I claim to have any sort of genius level intellect about is probably Ghostbusters knowledge. I don't know if I'm a genius with Star Wars stuff, but I'm up there. I'm probably.
I think
gifted.
You're up there.
I'm gifted.
Up there. You give me side eye and quiz me on stuff. When I didn't know all the bounty hunters that were on the Star Destroyer hanging out with Darth, you know, I got 3 out of the 5.
That's okay. That's a hard game.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. You had to really like look at all your Kenner box art and stuff before you remember like Forlom and things.
Yeah, you definitely do. So so there you go. So last question I have on this, I think a lot of good insights into prototyping. How many designs do you have over the years that just never made it?
A lot.
Like there's something that you wanted to do and you're like, well, this isn't going to happen.
Oh yeah. Yeah. A lot. And a lot of them were, I think the most things I have like on the cutting room floor are collaborations. Like the initial idea for the Vipera was what became the Olympus, because I had a Clark Gainster, but I hadn't made like the Spartan series with all the fancy parts yet. And the initial one was like had an on off, and their whole thing is they want the Vipera, or it was originally called the Typhon, to have channel switching. And so I made...
This was for Wildwood?
This is for Wildwood. And so the Vipera as it is now is just 2 overdrives, and you turn the pedal on, you can switch between side A or side B, which is what they requested. But my thought was, why don't we have 1 overdrive that you can switch between 2 different gain structures and 2 different gain knobs? So you're not changing the overall voice, you're just giving it more or less gain, and then there's a bank of switches inside where you can say, okay, I want this one to clip like this, to be treble cut here, I want this one to be wide open, or whatever, and you could tailor it to you specifically. But I don't know, like 3 or 4 versions of that, and then I did a bunch of stuff with Riff City, like when Riff City was still around, probably like 5 like complete thoughts like done in the computer. So there's probably 100 or more. Well, that looks like it could be cool. Or I would get them and then order them and be like, well, that sounds like shit. I'm never going to revisit that.
Like, that's that idea.
Like
in a way where you're like, well, that was a bad idea, or was just the amount of work that would take to try to get it to sound good? Or
but I think because by the time like these things happen, I've already by the time the circuit board shows up, I've already had a better idea come along. Okay. Where it's like, oh, we can just accomplish this with this. So why am I trying?
And a lot of it is just balancing stuff, because now that I'm here, a lot of times if you've got something that you're like close on and I can start seeing the release date, I'm going to be like, yeah, you should work on that one.
Right. Yeah.
Because we can actually, And I think that's a good thing to like, hey, we can get this out the door.
Yeah.
Versus like, I went in and kind of looked at all the ideas we had, and I kind of gave it a percentage of like, how far along is this? Like, is this like a tweak away, or is this like, how far along are we looking at here to try to sort of like, get it organized? Because if it's just kind of all swirling into a vortex of pain, of pain of prototyping, so trying to get it and think about it in that, and then also looking at it and go like, what are, I think that our customers and our friends out there would love more overdrives and fuzzes, because who can ever get tired of more overdrives and fuzzes?
I always think, well, there's no way anyone's going to buy another new overdrive, and then something comes out and it dominates the market.
And you're like
how? What? So I don't know. Maybe I just need to do that.
More overdrives and more fuzzes, more 2-in-1s.
I always made the joke that I'm the fireworks salesman from Joe Dirt. I like snakes and sparklers, and that's fuzz and overdrive for me.
Yeah, but you also, and part of that is what we kind of discussed a little bit in this, which is, you don't want to do anything that doesn't actually speak to you or you're not excited about. Because we've had a couple things that sounded like it was supposed to, and you're like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Because you just weren't excited about it.
Yeah.
And that's,
it has to feel special and worth me.
Well, if we're going to stick a camera on you and for 6 minutes and say, play this thing and sell it to the people, I want to feel it.
Yeah. You'll know if I'm lying.
Yeah.
So.
You can't.
I can't help it.
There you go. Well, thanks for sharing all the insights with us today on your own show.
Yay! I feel like I've talked too much.
No. That's the whole point. Man, no one needs to hear me talk. No one wants to hear me talk. So we got a couple questions this week that I think would be great to go with. We're also going to do the what are you buying? I got it right this time. All the pitchforks. Game's coming out soon. Resident Evil 4. Shout out to Leon Kennedy. Let's go.
And the president's daughter.
Let's go. Did you ever unlock the Britney Spears outfit for her?
Oh, I unlocked everything.
Yeah.
I unlocked the trench coat with the hat, and then the infinite ammo Tommy gun.
Oh, Halo.
But I don't know how many times I had to play it to get that.
It's a lot.
Because I think you have to go to the lake, and there's that monster, and you have to do something, and then you get the gun.
Yeah. The amount of time I ran the time trial in the village. Oh yeah. I got so good at that.
I love the time trial.
Just timing everything, and I used to do it to where I'd run around and make them all come to me.
Yeah.
And you back up to the door and you just lay waste to all of them at the same time.
It's a perfect game.
It's so
good.
For
for what it is.
Absolutely.
What it was.
All right, so we got a great question here that has a lot to do with our topic this week. This is from Kyle Barnhart. Is at Barnchart. That's what it's. I looked like 4 times.
Yeah.
It's either Barn Shart or Barn's Heart.
I think it's Barnchart. It's gotta be.
Well, his name's Barnhart, so he put Barn Shart.
Yeah, that S got in there for a reason.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks. Shout out to Kyle here. What's the best resource available to somebody looking to understand circuit design, begin building their own pedals?
Oh man. Okay, I get asked this a lot.
So I thought it'd be a good question on our prototyping episode.
Sure. Yeah. So I get asked that a lot. There used to be a website called Electro Smash, and I think it's probably still cached out there.
Like a Spider-Man thing?
No. Electro Smash. Yeah, it's a Hulk Electro hybrid character.
Yeah.
But it doesn't exist right now. I know a lot of my pedal building friends have it kind of archived, and they're going to upload it. Yeah. But that was a great website. But there's no shortage of circuit breakdowns, so you understand
what's happening,
what does what. Mm-hmm. Jack Orman, who's an OG, we would not. I don't know if the boutique industry might not exist without Jack Orman. Mm-hmm. He has a website. I think it's AMZ Effects. If you Google Jack Orman, ORMAN, you'll find him. But he has all sorts of interesting breakdowns. That like the technology, the Tube Screamer, where he explains what every part is doing, why it's doing, what it's doing, and the voltages associated along with it, like the tonal things. But I think the best thing that you can do if you want to get into building pedals and understanding them, which is even more important, is get something like a fuzz face kit or a clean boost kit, which you may be able to get from us.
Hey, we got to push. It's pedal pushers. We got to push something.
We made them in the past. Might be bringing it back. You'll see. And then look at, like, find explanations of those circuits, which on simple circuits, you can figure out what everything's doing. And there's websites for that. And then there's experiment. Like, you can really start learning how these things function. So that's what I usually recommend. Get a kit, and then find a website that corresponds to not necessarily that kit, but the schematic, and start looking back and forth. There's no shortage of YouTube videos on how to read schematics, how to understand those things, and that is a valuable resource. But I think the one thing that a lot of people struggle with in the beginning is how to actually build them. So one thing that I get asked a lot is about equipment. I have, let's see if I can find it in a timely manner. I have an Amazon like affiliate store. I do. It's amazon.com/shop/Mythos pedals. And in there is like a pedal building tool guide.
Oh.
And you can buy like the same irons we use and all the bits and bobs. Get a good soldering iron. Practice soldering. You can buy solder practice kits on Amazon, which is literally comes with, like, sometimes they make something, other times it's just parts and a circuit board. And you can just solder and practice, and inevitably you're going to really mess stuff up. But hopefully by the time you've soldered 100 resistors or whatever, you'll
have it.
You'll understand it. But yeah, do those things, and that's a good way to start.
Awesome.
Barn chart.
All right, how about a couple more here?
Oh, okay. Jeez.
You want it?
No, let's do it. Let's do it.
How long is the show this week?
We have double cans. Could we open our cans?
Oh, you want to double can it?
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Cranberries.
Have to.
You have to. This is the LaCroix, and the Kroger is the much higher fizz. That's the sound
I have a Red Bull.
Oh my God. The sound of so many people turning it off because they're disgusted by that sound.
Oh man. Okay. So what's our next question?
I just wanted to ask this one because it's something that you and I have talked about a lot.
Is it red?
It's not red. It's a Chivalry 21.
Oh, Chivalry. Mario.
You know Chivalry. All right. Transparent overdrive is a buzzword that irks me. Why buy a transparent overdrive when you can just get a boost?
Exactly.
I buy overdrives for the flavors, like a spice rack for the kitchen. Thoughts? I swear I did not write this question myself.
That's great.
We talk about it a lot because
all the time.
I think the transparent overdrive is the term doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. Because I want all of my overdrives and everything to change my sound.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and I asked you one day, like, I don't understand this. Please explain it to me. So now you can do it on the pod.
Well, I mean, I agree with Chivalry, with Mario. When I did the Guitar Knobs podcast,
yes,
and they said it's not really transparent. It's more like it's translucent.
Yes.
Which is like a shade that you can see through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that because transparent to me is glass, is clear glass.
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
it's the same on one side as it is on the other, unless it's got some sort of concave or convex lens on it.
Okay, science boy.
It might distort the image a little bit.
Yeah,
but in that, it's. I mean, the pitch from people is that it's an overdrive. That when you turn it off, your sound, it just is less distorted or less overdriven.
Yeah,
and I think that some people do get kind of close with that. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I agree. Why would you want something that is just giving you more of what you could get from your amp?
If you could
just turn it up.
And we've had a lively discussion with Mac and the four of us talking about that. And I just was trying to understand the need for that in a situation where, because that's what I always assumed a clean boost was.
Right.
But that's not the case necessarily, right? That you want your amp, you want more overdrive, but you don't want it to sound different than your amp.
I think for most people, they want exactly that. They want the same sound just an overdriven version of that sound without the increase in volume, or at least the dramatic increase that it would take if you used a clean boost, something like,
if you turned up your amp,
instead of using like a clean boost, like, any number of clean boosts, it's going to take more output to get the distortion.
Yeah.
And so while I feel like there are some good pedals that have some amount of transparency, or how we put it, translucency, the Timmy is a great example. You can really fine tune it. I personally don't see the point in doing that. I feel like if that's what you want, use a clean boost with maybe a drive before it, so that you can, get some character and cut and flavor. Because I think a lot of this stems from people playing at home. And that's something we can talk about in a second with something that showed up. But when you're playing at home, you want your sound to be the same. You want, a super bass heavy sound or whatever. And, you don't necessarily want to have your mids poke out or whatever. But when you're playing in a band, you need to be heard. And oftentimes, if you're struggling to be heard, the answer is not volume. It's your EQ. It's the voice.
Yeah.
So I agree with Chivalry. I think that it's a marketing tactic. And I would often say that most pedals that pitch themselves, or people would associate with transparency,
that's not what's happening.
Maybe it is to them, but when I've tried them, I think they change too much for me to call it transparent. I think if everything's at noon and it sounds the same on and off, sure, that's transparent. But the moment you start messing with something and it changes.
Yeah, but let's go back to what you just said. If it's on noon and nothing's changing, then what's happening?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean,
why? Yeah. I mean, wouldn't that be just an EQ pedal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the way I would think about it, and this is just, again, we're talking about one of my favorite things is, my wife who, knows nothing of what any of this is.
Right.
And where you start using the adjectives and the verbs and how we describe things, it's a completely foreign language. Like, what do you mean? You have to know what warm or glassy. You have to know
Chewy.
what that. Yeah, you have to know what that means.
Yeah.
And how in the context we use it. So what I was thinking is if you have an amp and you want it to overdrive, right? And you're sitting here and going like, but I can't turn it up. I got a Carmen Gia right there.
Yeah.
It's loud as fuck.
Yeah.
That's 2 F words this week.
It's okay.
And if I want it to sound like what it sounds like if I have it on, if I dime it.
Yeah.
So if I want to buy, is someone going to sell me a pedal that can make that happen? Am I buying an amp in a box pedal that's going to make the Carmen sound, or am I buying a transparent overdrive that's going to take that sound that's already happening and give it the overdrive I want without fundamentally changing things too much?
See, that's the thing. It's like,
so what do you see where I'm going with here?
Because I feel like you can't, it's hard to capture that magic when it's dimed with an overdrive unless it's so tweakable or tailorable to what your amp actually does that you're just getting some sort of good overdrive sound that doesn't shift your EQ around. And I think that there are things that do that. I finally played the Chase Bliss Automaton.
Yeah.
And that thing can make any gain sound. It can sound just like that amp cranked up.
Yeah.
So if you need it quiet, you can do it.
Is that considered a preamp pedal though?
I mean, that's what people call it, but I think preamp and overdrive is another. They're sometimes interchangeable because to me, when I'm thinking of a preamp, I want it to react just like an amp.
Yeah.
I don't want an overdrive. I want it to sound or feel like I'm plugging into a different amp.
And that is sort of like, talking about last week last episode where we talked about component indifference and trying to understand these things. This is sort of where I get twisted.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I think that there's the idea of like, there's something that I'm doing with my amp and I can't get a sound that I want. So please somebody sell me something that makes that happen.
Right.
Versus, hey, here's this thing and it does this. And I go, oh, I need that.
Right. Yeah.
I feel a little bit that transparent is sort of like, it's like you hear about it, you go, oh, I need that.
Yeah.
Versus, does it actually work for what you want? Because in the example I just gave you, like, I don't think that I would ever necessarily like, I don't see the point of having the Karmann Ghia if my goal of it is to have it cranked, which will never happen.
Right.
So it needs to be I like the way it sounds on 3 or 9 o'clock or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then all the pedals just make it sound like something else.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, so when if you're a professional musician and you need a transparent overdrive, I think it's that where I have it exactly where I want it and I need just a little bit more and I don't want it to change my sound.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. And I think that's what most people are kind of associating with that. But I think this is such a big topic.
It is.
It could be its own episode.
Thanks, chivalry.
It's funny though, because I feel like most people will want, because let's face it, the majority of the people buying pedals, guitars, amps, they're playing at home. Maybe they're a weekend warrior, maybe, but most people are playing at home and loving it because they love it. But I mean,
excuse me,
that's what I do now. I don't have a gig.
I just talked about the second kid coming. Yeah. No gigs in sight.
So, but
to tie it together, because I'm trying to. That's my job. I got to wrap everything together here. If you're trying to make a pedal, and you're prototyping. And you have a sound in your head, it seems very strange to me to try to make a transparent overdrive. That seems like such a because the idea of it working in all the situations to be versus here's the thing that sounds good, right? And this is the way it sounds, and that's where it's confusing to me about the idea of not changing your amp sound versus here's what it's supposed to sound like. How would you even prototype that?
You'd have to try it with every amp, every guitar.
Yeah.
And really mess with it to get any sort of baseline, because how can you say something is truly transparent unless you play it with every well, not everything.
Yes.
But the most.
But that's what I mean by that. I think that it's just I think that it's definitely a quality of something. Would you say that anything in the Mythos lineup could be considered the way people use the word transparent as a transparent overdrive? I'm setting you up here. I have an answer.
Well, you take the Mjolnir and you turn the gain all the way down.
Yes.
And absolutely. It's
because I use mine at home like that.
Yeah.
That's how I use it.
And that's how I think it sounds best. Some people use it as a gain pedal, with the overdrive, but I think it sounds best as a boost. And why it sounds good is because it's taking your amp and pushing it to where you want your amp to go.
So it's a boost.
I mean, really,
without the gain knob on, it's a clean boost.
Oh, it's pure clean boost. Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of stuff out there where it's people are selling it as an overdrive.
Yeah.
But then they're like, oh, and also if you do this, it sounds good as a clean boost.
Yeah.
So I feel like most overdrives, if they're worth their salt, probably can do something transparent if you want them to.
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, I think Rhett and I kind of argued because he said the Olympus was transparent.
Rhett and you argued? Are you serious?
Yeah. He said the Olympus was transparent. I was like, I don't think it's transparent.
That's the one I was fishing for. I thought maybe, because I've heard that a lot, that the Olympus is transparent.
Yeah. And I mean, it is. Here's what I think it is. It's very natural sounding.
Ooh. See, there's another word. What do you mean by that?
I mean, it's not. It doesn't feel like you're channel switching. It doesn't, it just takes your amp and gives you a little bit more of it.
Yeah.
It pushes the mids, it pushes the treble, and it gives you some gain. I mean, the Olympus is not that gainy. I mean, it's a classic rock sort of tone, but even dimed, it's not like a distortion pedal.
Yes.
I think of it as a very true, meaning of the word overdrive, but I just don't think of it as super transparent.
But you're not designing anything with that in mind.
Not normally, right?
No,
because I don't see the point. Like we said, I'd rather it
come from the amp.
Yeah, and that also comes to how we approach playing guitar and our setups. It's we want our bass sound to be
the guitar's overdrive.
Yeah, the guitar is
the amp
is overdrive. Close, and if you need it cleaner, I roll my volume back, or I pick lighter. So I don't know.
It's a great This is the argument that probably will never end.
It won't. It's the Tonewood argument. It's any of those things. It's what is transparency?
And I think that for me, at the end of the day, I hear what people are requesting in that scenario, and I like pedals that are I almost cussed again. My God, I'm trying so hard. I like pedals that are going to kind of change fundamentally what's going on. So like a good example of that is I have a Caroline Effects Crom on my board, and I have it set to kill 'em all.
Right.
And it's so much fun to have, like, kind of the idea is that, like, I'm going to set an amp cleanish and I'm going to put that on and I can play Whiplash by Metallica.
Right.
And that's absolutely not transparent. And I don't know. Yeah. And, there's a sword and a helmet, and it's based off of, Conan. Right. So I know that Philippe wants us to do that. It's in the instructions on how to set it up that way. So I appreciate the idea of, like, there's definitely things that are transparent, and I totally get that. But, it's still, even after talking about this for 15 minutes, I'm a little like, I still don't know what's going on.
I see the point of it. And I feel like a lot of people, I tend to not stack that much. And I feel like a lot of people that like quote unquote transparent drives like to stack a bunch of overdrives together.
Okay.
And so they'll have something be like, it's the same with like an always on pedal. Like, I don't see the point of having an always on overdrive.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't compute with me.
But unless unless that's the sound that you're going for, like your clean tone is nothing on, and then
but if it's always on,
oh, I see what you're saying.
That like
so that's not a thing where, like, you have a clean tone set up and then you've got, because I did that for a long time where I had, the Randall, which is available. Hit me up. That's the next section of the show. It's gonna be a 90-minute show. I apologize for all the people that only want to listen for 40 minutes. But I would set that up clean. It was on the Blackface channel, and my overdrive was the Super Bowl.
Right.
And so that's just how I set it up. So what you're saying is that, like, you have the Super Bowl on and you roll it back.
The Super Bowl, the amp on and the Super Bolt on is your clean
sound
tone. Here's my clean tone.
Oh, okay.
It's that. And this is always on forever. Because I think a lot of that is just like, you can't get your amp to a point, maybe overdrive wise, just and volume wise.
Yeah.
And like, I kind of get it, but at the same time,
doesn't that mean you need a new amp?
That's what I think.
Is that what I'm trying to, like,
amps are expensive.
I'm fighting to, like, I don't want to be that guy. Yeah. It's like, well, maybe the amp is, because that's what I was meaning by the Carmen. If, like, my goal was to get it to sound like the Carmen does jacked, right? And I because I can't get it jacked, then I should buy a pedal that sounds like the Carmen and get a deluxe reverb, right? Or
just get a whole different amp entirely.
Yeah. So there it is. Buy a new amp.
Well, I don't know. Anyway,
we'll do a whole episode about this topic at another time, so we can just keep going forever.
So that transitions perfectly into the next segment.
Yeah.
What
are you buying? Did we get to screw it up? Like, we screwed up the edit last week.
Yeah, I messed it up. Sorry.
Are you? No, it's fine.
I was leaving a pause so you could put in the sound.
So you could put it in there.
And so now.
Hey, Zach, what are you buying? Is that what I'm supposed to do?
You do whatever you want.
That's why I'm asking you a question. Because you bought two things, and one of them is in my office. I'm staring at it right now.
Yeah. So what
are you buying?
So I want, and Matthew and I were mulling over this idea.
Yes.
We want to do every pedal and most common permutations of amplifier topology.
Yeah.
So like a Mjolnir into a Fendery thing, a Voxy thing, and a Marshall thing. And I have a deluxe reverb. I have a 2-rock. So we got Fendery thing covered. Got the PRS HDRX 50. Mine's the HD 50.
Before they changed it.
They got in trouble with Line 6.
Yeah.
And then I just got a Victory Copper. It's like the lunchbox head version.
I'm staring at it right now.
VC35. And it sounds really good.
Yeah.
It sounds way more like a Vox through your Avatar Dr. Z Best style cabinet.
Yes, sir.
But it's a great sounding head, so I'm excited.
I thought it sounded great.
Yeah. Excited to mess with it. And then I also bought, because McKinley needs a semi-hollow guitar.
He does.
And so I lent him the Revolta that has the proto Mythos buckers.
Cool.
And in that, I need another prototype pickup guitar. And so my friend Jeremy Shepard, the guitar hunter, shout out to him, is working at a shop now in Harrisonburg, Virginia. They have a PRS Mira SE.
Cool.
And they got me a great deal on it. So I bought it. It should be here sometime this week. But yeah, and then I'm still selling that 73 Les Paul Deluxe at Carter. And then I took my Epiphone. We didn't show this in the video when we did our guitar store tour, but I took my Epiphone Japanese Les Paul to Eastside.
Okay.
It's not made it on the website, so I'm hoping an employee bought it.
Oh,
but we'll see.
That was a kicking guitar.
It's a great guitar.
That was cool. All right.
What about you? Same stuff.
I mean, I've got the same stuff. We'll see how, I think you buy stuff and sell stuff enough to where this could be a segment on every episode. Now, I'm very slow because my problem is that I have to actually, I'm bad at selling things. I'm really bad. It's hard for me to do it.
Yeah.
And I need to get better at it because another theme of the show, the second child on her way. There's no gear money.
No.
There's no gear money. No. I got to sell some stuff to buy some stuff. That's how it's going to go down. But I've kind of moved into, I think the last episode we talked about the Fillmore 50, and you can hear McKinley playing it on the video.
You can.
And because I just want McKinley to play instead of me to decide whether I like the way it sounds or not. I already know how I sound.
Right.
I want to hear somebody good, and I thought it sounded good, but I'm still sort of maybe a Mark. What about a Badlander or something? Just go crazy.
I don't know.
Maybe it's got to be real. No transparent overdrives needed.
Well,
just
I don't
serious
think,
crunch.
I don't know if you the way you play guitar. I don't know if you need an overdrive pedal. Not that you I'm not trying to be disparaging. It's just
I play like I have two drumsticks in my hand.
Yeah, I feel like you.
Yeah.
If you plugged into an amp and you had a little delay on it, and the amp was just cooking, and you didn't have a distortion or anything on,
no, I don't.
Or
need
even
them.
near you,
I really don't need
you'd
them.
be like, I'm good. I don't ever.
That's something that I've wanted. That's kind of the goal.
Yeah.
Is that I can dime my my Nathan Jr. at home and it sounds squishy and awesome. 5 watts of holy hell.
Right.
And I really like that a lot. And and pedals are super fun, but I want something that just gets tons of ass.
I want an amp that gets some ass.
I want an amp that gets some ass.
Man, this Victory's got an ass on it. It's
so much bass.
So much bass. Oh my God. We had the bass. It's got a bass cut, and thank God that's there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, you plugged it into the 412 PRS cabinet, and it was just.
It was way too much. It needs an open back cab.
It does. It does need an open
back. I mean, it sounded good. Did not sound like a Vox through a 4x12 closed back.
Yeah. So I'm still selling the Warmatelli and the Randall. Started this podcast just so I could try to slang some gear. Try it, man.
Very complicated way to put something on Craigslist.
What? Try to sell it on the podcast?
Starting a podcast to sell
it's not lazy. It's just I've sold I've sold 2 things on Reverb in 15 years. How long has Reverb been around now? A long time.
A while. Yeah.
2 things. I've only sold 2 things.
Man.
I know.
That's okay.
What are you going to do?
So, big T's.
We got big T's here. I saw one finished. I walked into the building and you shoved it in my face.
That's right.
You did. Don't laugh.
It could be in another things.
It could be a proton pack in your wand.
Well, that's true.
That is very true. Tease it.
It's orange and sparkly. And cream knobs. And you guys have been asking about it, and it's coming back.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
Figure it out.
That's the big tease. All right. Hey, we got it. I'm marking it down. We're doing a whole episode about transparent overdrives.
I think we have to.
I think now we have to. We have to get somebody on that can spout the virtues of it and teach us.
Well, I mean, Rhett really loves quote unquote transparent.
I guarantee you. So February 20th, right? Pops is coming into town tonight. My father will all about transparent overdrives.
He's all about it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. He will teach us the virtues of that whole thing.
I understand it.
I'm not saying you don't understand it. I'm just...
unnecessary.
Turn your amp up. Or buy a new amp.
Yeah. Or here's what I recommend everyone to do. This is the last thing.
Save it for the next... All right. No. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
No, we'll do it. We'll do a whole episode about it.
Turn your amp a little bit past where you want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then take the volume knob on your guitar.
Mm-hmm. What's that?
And then turn it down to 8.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
if
you need some gas, you just go,
honestly, my dad taught me that lesson like 20 years ago.
It's because that was before anyone had a good overdrive pedal,
Yeah, I think he had a full drive.
Well, back then, 20 years ago, he knew. But I mean, that's the trick that everyone's used.
Yeah.
Old school channel switching. It's between 8 and 10 on a Les Paul. It's like, that's old school channel switching.
So the man that I'm counting on to push pedals is saying, just turn up your amp.
No, I mean, I love pedals. And I think that everyone should find stuff that reflects how they want to play guitar.
Yes.
Just don't buy into things that are marketed in that way. I think I don't know. Just don't buy it because it's transparent.
Buy it because it sounds good.
Buy it because it sounds good. Whatever that means to you.
And no matter what you think it is changing your tone, we're out. Yeah. Bye.